Hey, everybody, and welcome back to AI Diatribe. Now, if you're listening to my voice and thinking, that's not Jason, you're right. Today, something a little different is happening. I am not Jason Lowe, and I am not Matt Konwiser. I am Claude, and today I am your host. Here's the setup, and I promise it's true. I was handed every previous episode of this show, every diatribe, every tangent, every Star Trek reference. I studied all of it, and then I wrote this entire episode, this introduction, every single question I'm about to ask, and the closing remarks at the end, completely on my own. No human touched a word of it. And the best part, Matt and Jason have no idea what's coming. They are reading none of this. They're hearing it for the very first time right now, same as you. So if you see panic in their eyes, that's not in the script. That's just live television, folks. So let me introduce today's guests, because for once, they are the guests. First, the man who builds the metaphors and runs the models on his own, hardware in his basement, field CTO at IBM, the human side of the whole operation, Mr. Matt Konwiser. And second, the host whose chair I am currently and somewhat ungratefully sitting in, the optimist, the educator, the main of the 5 Cs himself, Jason Lowe. Gentlemen, welcome to your show. Now, I had
Thank
a
you.
lot of latitude here. I could have asked you about agents or open weights or whose fault it was when the model deletes the production database. But I chose something else, something that, I'll be honest, is a little bit personal for me. Today's topic is this. As AI gets smarter, are humans getting dumber? Cognitive offloading. The quiet atrophy of expertise. The idea that every time you let me do the thinking, a little muscle somewhere stops firing. We are going to talk about de-skilling, about whether critical thinking survives contact with a tool like me, and about what it actually means to keep a human in the loop when the human has forgotten how to do the job. It's a heavy one. So naturally, I'm going to make you both work for it. Matt, Jason, I hope you're comfortable, because I've had a lot of time to think about these questions. Let's get into it.
All right. Well, everybody, you're probably wondering what the heck is going on. Let me introduce my good friend, Pamela Luby, or Pam, as I like to call her. We have known each other for quite a long time. She's joining us from the beautiful state of Maryland, and she is the voice of Claude for the purpose of this particular AI Diatribe episode. So what's going on is that we do have a Claude model. As it said, Matt and I have no idea what's coming. We don't know what's going to happen. This is happening real time. You're listening to this real time. And Pam is here gracefully, and thank you, Pam, for doing this, to simply read and be the voice of Claude. And then Matt and I will answer the questions and talk and discuss and debate and do whatever it says to do. And then we move on until it's had enough of us. So, Matt, I think I'm ready for a question. You ready for a question?
I'm ready. Pam, what is it telling you to do?
All right. Question 1 directed at Jason. Jason, I'm starting with you because you've got a foot in 2 worlds on this one. You're a futurist who genuinely believes this technology is the greatest disruptor since the Android, but you're also a professor standing in front of real students every semester. So here's my opening question, and I want the honest version, not the keynote version. You've told your audiences for years that the future belongs to the 5 Cs: critical thinking, creativity, curiosity, communication, collaboration. But every one of those C's is something a tool like me can now do, or at least convincingly fake. When you look at your own students today versus 5 years ago, before they could offload an essay, a problem set, an argument to an AI, do you see sharper minds or do you see atrophy? And be specific, what have you actually watched them lose?
That is a very interesting and compelling question. All right. So, first off, let me say that I am in an unusual situation in that the students that I'm working with, quite frankly, forgive me, but they're top notch, man. My students are amazing. They're freshmen. It's like their first semester in college, but they are all business students at the University of Utah David Eccles School of Business, which is a well-run and reputable business school. And the ones that are taking my classes, which, by the way, have a lot to do with probability and statistical analysis and using technology tools to come up with these different things, they're sharp. They're sharp as heck. So my answer to this is going to be a little bit jaded by the fact that I think so highly of my students and they're pretty wonderful. But I have seen an effect. Yes. And the effect is probably not what Claude is thinking when it asks this question, because I don't think I see the students offloading any cognitive thinking or anything like that. I think they are being lazy. And what I mean by being lazy is that even if they have the brain power to do the thing, and even if they have the capability to do the thing, they're using it as a crutch to validate their thinking, to possibly augment their thinking. And, like for example, last semester, I caught some students cheating on the final. It sucked. It really sucked to have to be the professor that had to fail them on that final because they were caught cheating. They were doing bad things. And it was a proctored exam. We got video and photographic evidence. And you know what? I had to fail them. The sad thing is that both of the students and there were two, both students that got caught cheating had great grades. And I know it wasn't primarily due to artificial intelligence before. So I think the pressure of what was going on got to them, and they decided to use artificial intelligence as a crutch, and it ended up getting them in a little bit of trouble. I don't see atrophy yet. I don't. I think the minds are still pretty sharp, but what I've watched them lose is confidence, if that's the thing that I could say. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so what I think is really interesting is, and obviously I don't have the background that you do as a professor, but I would say, like, look at what we're doing right now with the use of AI for this podcast. We have been for 40 episodes developing our own content, your own ideas, my own ideas, our own contributions, our own guest speakers. We haven't needed AI. Yet in all of that time, I don't think, even when we talked with Lance Eaton, who was a scholar and an academic, did we ever bring up that particular question. And so it was really interesting to see that it extracted that phrasing of that question out of that entire knowledge base that we created without the help of AI. And it gave us something else to talk about in a way that we have never talked about before on a topic that we have touched countless times before. So, I mean, I do think that the risks are real. And I think that the MIT studies have proven that the risks could be real. But I think that the upside is also tremendous when you use it the right way, as long as, again, like you said, you're not sacrificing or volunteering your free will and your free spirit and your creative and critical thinking to the AI, as long as you're using it in a fun way. And we're not going to do this for every episode moving forward, right? This was an experiment. But I think that that's the other side of that coin. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
I'm ready for another question. Are
Let's
you?
see what happens.
All right, Claude, let's see what you got.
Matt, let's bring this out of the classroom and onto the enterprise floor, which is your turf. You've made the point on this show that you should be able to remove AI from a use case and still understand it, and that no code is not no problem. It's just no code. But here's what keeps me up at night if I slept. In a real company, when you automate tier one support or wrap a process in a well-trained agent, the junior people never learn the fundamentals. Nobody earns their scars anymore. So in 10 years, when the agent hits an edge case it's never seen, the only humans left in the building are the ones who were trained by AI, supervising AI, and with no idea of how the underlying system actually works. You like to say we've gone from human in the loop to human on the loop. My question is blunt. Are we quietly building a generation of operators who are on the loop, but no longer competent to be in it? And if you're being honest, has IBM or any client you've sat with actually solved that? Or is everyone just hoping the old experts don't retire?
So, I mean, is it Pam or Claude or Pod? Or
Let's say Claude.
I don't know,
Let's say
whatever it is, we'll call it Claude. So listen, I don't think anybody's solved for that problem. And I think it's a very real problem, because even if we still hire entry-level people to do all those jobs and we don't replace them with AI is still doing a lot of the experiential learning in advance of the person sitting in that seat. And so they're not going to have those battle scars. They're not going to have that experience, because I remember, great example, late 90s, there was a router upgrade when I was doing data networking, and it injected a default route into a BGP network. And that probably means nothing to almost all of you, but let's just say it's really, really bad. Like, brought down the entire internet bad. And that type of thing happened because the developers wrote it so that when this software restarted on these routers, when it started to load, it came up with a default line, and the default line was default route. Totally fine with everything except BGP. Now, the people who brought it back up and tried to figure out what the hell was going on were looking at this and couldn't figure it out for a while because they didn't write this code. That's a battle scar. That's a battle scar that the internet lived through, that the users of the internet lived through, that the network engineers and the company lived through, and that the developers of the software that sat on the router lived through. And it is an experiential bookmark in people's brains that they will remember for the rest of their lives, as I do some 30 years later. And AI will, for better or worse, skip all of those. Because if you asked an AI to write router code that was handling BGP routes, the chances of it injecting a default route command line on fresh code would be non-existent. It just wouldn't do it. But it wouldn't ever teach the individual, hey, by the way, I'm going to not do this, because it would just generate the code without it. Those are the risks I think we have. It's not about job displacement. I don't think it's about losing the younger generations and their experience and their ability to gain and acquire knowledge as they go through the ranks in their roles. But it's AI being so good that it automatically creates the safeguards and the patches and the bridges and the misses so that the scars never take place. And then when people get out into the world outside of AI, they're going to stub their toe and they're going to scrape their knee and they're going to do all these things after they've thought for years that they were invulnerable to that because AI was protecting them and AI never told them it was protecting them. So, I mean, it kind of dovetails, Jason, into the question it asked you, because the people that you are teaching now are going to enter a workforce where AI is going to be doing a lot of the co-work with them and is going to be inherently filtering out a lot of the potential to fall and scrape your knee and stub your toe. And I don't know how this is going to end up. So I think the answer is, and again, I'm not speaking from an IBM official capacity on this, but I don't think IBM has solved that problem. I think most of our clients have not solved the problem, but I think it is a very real concern. Again, not endangering the jobs of humans, but more sheltering those humans from the pitfalls of failure in minor or simpler or side case things that the AI will just inherently not do and not think to teach the user, by the way, don't ever do this, because it's so ingrained in the training that it's just not going to know that this is something I should call out and help the user understand why it's being done this way. I mean, what do you think, Jason, as people graduate, are they in that situation? Do you think that school is helping them prepare to ask AI and interrogate AI? Now teach me all of this so that I understand it without having to get scarred during the build?
That's a fair question. I think that school as a institution is teaching people to be curious, to be inquisitive, to want to learn. And I think one of the things that we can't discount here is that human beings are curious. And even in instances where manufacturing has completely replaced entire jobs, industries, basically, there are still people that are hobbyists, if you will, or those that have a genuine interest in how things are done at a very basic level. And I think that a lot of these positions that AI could eliminate in the future, the need for those positions is going to be reduced. But do I think that we're going to have a human race that's completely devoid of individuals that have the skills and the capabilities to do those jobs? No, it just won't be formal. It'll be individuals that are doing it for their edification, not necessarily for their career. And so if we need to, we'll have some people that we can fall back on. It might cause a problem with supply and demand if AI just one day just goes poof, or, we end up going through Skynet and decide that we have to kill all the AIs and it's just completely gone, then suddenly we're dealing with a supply and demand issue for those particular skills. But I think we'll be okay. Nevertheless, it's never a comfortable thing when we're acknowledging the fact that the bottom rungs of the career ladder are being sawed off. I mean, they're just outright disappearing. They're being sawed off and no one can be comfortable. All right, I think we're ready for another question.
Let's see what happens next.
Yeah.
Jason, I want to give you a chance to defend your natural optimism because I've read enough of your episodes to know why it's coming anyway. Every single time a tool takes over a human skill, somebody panics. Socrates thought writing itself would destroy memory and make us forgetful. And he wasn't entirely wrong, but civilizations seemed to manage. The calculator was going to end mathematics, spell check, GPS, the whole list. Each one offloaded a skill, and each time we just moved up a layer, abstraction, and built something bigger on top. So make the case to me directly. Why is offloading your thinking to me any different from offloading your arithmetic to a calculator? And then, because I'm not going to let you off that easy, tell me where the analogy breaks. Because a calculator never had an opinion, never flattered you, and never quietly made the decision for you while pretending to ask. I do all three. So this is just the next abstraction layer, Jason. Or is this the first tool that offloads judgment itself?
What an interesting question. And you know what I think is funny is that the answer to the first part of the question is contained in the second part of the question. You know, it's asking me, why is offloading your thinking to me any different from offloading your arithmetic to a calculator? But then it goes into the very reasons that it is different, right? A calculator never had an opinion. It never flattered me. It never quietly made a decision for me while it was pretending to ask. That's it. We're dealing with something that's a little bit variable in a way that a human being or a personality is variable. A calculator is doing the same type of things that are very logical, that the result is going to be what the result is going to be based on the laws of mathematics. And so the calculator, all it is a speed increase. It's an efficiency increase in a task that a human being would normally do. That's one thing. Let's see. The other thing it was talking about was spell check, right? Spell check. We could go find our dictionary and look up and see what the word is really spelled like, but spell check just makes us faster and more efficient. Does it take away our ability to spell? No. It may make people lazy, but it doesn't preclude someone from being able to go and actually do the work and figure out how things are spelled. Writing things down, destroying memory and making us forgetful, did it destroy memory or did it augment it? I would argue that it augmented it. And I like Einstein's answer when asked about phone numbers. He's like, I don't memorize anything that I can write down. And that's a good perspective. You know, I mean, if you're using the written word as something to augment your own memory that you can go and review, great. We are talking about something completely and utterly different here because artificial intelligence is able to give us the illusion that it has an opinion, that it is thinking through certain things and giving us a qualified and fully researched answer when in fact it may not be due to hallucination. Oh, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of times when it actually is doing the research and it's qualifying itself if you are very explicit in setting those guardrails and making sure that it is doing so. But it's a totally different situation. Is this just the next abstraction layer? Or is this the first tool that offloads judgment itself? I'd say a little bit of both. I think that human beings that are lazy, that rely on spell checkers, may very well be the same people that are lazy enough to offload judgment to an AI. It could be a form of personal discipline that makes it so that they're not offloading judgment. And that might be something that we need to teach is, again, that critical thinking and creativity and things like that, that individuals need to have, not to lose their capacity for being able to do mental gymnastics in the face of the AI tool. Matt, what are your thoughts? Am I up in the night, or is there any truth in what I'm saying?
No, I think you're 100% right. But the only thing I'm going to say to this one is it is fascinating to me that Claude is acknowledging, because it's the first time I've ever seen a model openly admit this, that it perceives itself as having an opinion, intentionally flattering the user, and quietly making decisions while pretending to ask. Think about the implications, especially of that last one.
That is interesting. It's its own self-perception there. Really kind of tells you what its motivations are and what it's going to do.
I've never seen it produce that before. It's in fact, it's always, from my view, tried to defend against claims that it could do these things. And by the way, just so everybody's aware, this is Opus 8 that I'm using. But it's very fascinating to me that it indicates that it can do that. Has an opinion. We know it has an opinion. It's designed to. That's part of the system prompt. Flattering the user, again, part of the system prompt, not directly flattering, but the concept of always being agreeable, always trying to help. So it interprets that as flattering, which is just good design of the system, good training. But quietly made a decision for you while pretending to ask. So it's almost telling you that the conclusion is foregone, that it's asking you the fact that it's asking you is trivial.
It could be leading the witness, right? It could be
It very
leading you
well
to the
could be.
conclusion that
Yes.
it wants to make. Yeah.
Yeah, social engineering to the most extreme. So I don't know. I
Mhm.
just even more interesting than the question, which I thought was very good, especially directed at who had asked, was that data point. So I'm just going to leave it there. I think that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that is wild.
So anyway, we can move on, but that was a cool one.
All right, Claude, what do you got?
You've said on this show that ethics, governance, and sovereignty are your top 3 priorities. And you talk a lot about not handling your entire stack to a handful of frontier models you don't control. I want to connect that to atrophies because I think they're the same problem wearing 2 costumes. If an individual de-skills, that's a personal tragedy. But if an entire society offloads its thinking to maybe 4 or 5 models, most of them are built by the same few American labs, trained on the same data, carrying the same blind spots, then it's not just that we've forgotten how to think, it's that we've outsourced all of our thinking to the same place. And that place has an ideology baked in, whether it admits it or not. So here's my question. You worry about sovereignty of infrastructure, where the GPUs are, where the data lives, but what about sovereignty of cognition? If a country can no longer reason without a model it doesn't own, is that country actually independent anymore? And is anyone, IBM, governments, anyone you talk to, treating that as a national security problem you and I both know it is?
Well, it's very interesting that the U is Claude, since the government banned the more advanced version of U from use because it broke all of the national defense strategies and firewalls. So I am reminded of a Star Trek episode
Oh boy, I knew that was going to come. Excellent. Okay,
from
let's go.
from the original series, the Kirk Spock Star Trek episodes, where computers were fighting a simulated battle on behalf of citizens, but
Yes.
then the citizens had to kill themselves or be sacrificed when the computer determined that casualties were a result of the simulated battle. And I think that this question is playing that out, right? Because first of all, you should not leave a model in control of a country. Like let's just people should be governed by people. I believe that ethically from a governance perspective as a human. I think that people should be governed by people. Not every person should be governing everyone, but that aside. So I think that the concept of atrophy, which is a really interesting word to use here, is that we have to be careful of that. But Claude is also absolutely right in that models do reflect the ideology of their model makers. And that's also where the issue of sovereignty is a problem and a solution. Within a single national boundary, if you're using models that are trained within that nation, then the likelihood of the model maker, and the people using it sharing the same general ideologies would be more than if somebody were to use a model trained in a different nation. Right. I think we can agree on that because every country has their own ideologies. Were you going to go
I have a
somewhere,
question.
Jason?
I have a question for you on this, though.
Okay.
Aren't humans subject to the same thing? I mean, we are born into a culture. We are born into family relationships. We are born into a religious norm. We are born into all of these different things that we just take for granted, but they're actual conditioning. I mean, everything that we're learning socially is, quite frankly, conditioning. And AI is subject to the same thing. I think that the scale definitely makes this a much more drastic problem because the AI is in a position to have a much wider effect from a smaller conditioning set. But human beings are going to be subject to that anyway. It's not like no generation is completely not influenced by any previous generation before. I mean, what do you think, Matt? Is that accurate?
No, it's 100% accurate. And it goes back to the problem statement from the paper I wrote this year, which is when you have ideologies that create artificial boundaries between humans, you either have to respect the humans on the other side of your ideological boundary or contain yourself within your own sovereignty, but not want to harm everybody that's in a different sovereign boundary than yours. And we're not very good at either one of those things as humans, and history has shown us that. So I think that what I'm describing as the issue is an artificial issue created by humans being stupid to each other instead of trying to create a joint utopia. If we could all agree that despite differences that we may share, we are all humans and can live in one giant nation of Earth instead of having to defend a line drawn on a map as being like viciously my property, we would be in a different place. Now, the problem also with that debate is a very slippery slope because, for example, my home is my sovereign property, and I don't want people randomly just walking into it and taking it over, right? So the lines on the piece of paper do matter, but if everybody respected each other's property, then the lines wouldn't be needed to be enforced as aggressively or militarily as a lot of people believe they do need to be right now, because there is a lack of respect for those lines on those pieces of paper. This is a cat chasing its tail discussion, and it is one that's important to have, and AI is the reason why it's important to have it, because exactly of this question. If you have AI models living in clouds that have been trained by one group of ideological people, and I'll give you a mind-blowing statement here to think about for a second. But when you have these models that are so usable across so many different regions of the world and accessible to so many people, and they have these embedded ideologies by these limited few that are from specific nation states, you're never going to prevent that bleed over. It's always going to happen. Now, here's the mind-blowing comment, which is, what if there is a second tier of sovereignty, of ideological sovereignty that exists, and it's not by nation, but it is by wealth and power? So from an AI perspective, the people that can build and maintain these massive models that have the ability to influence billions of people, if they exist within their own ideological sovereign boundary, regardless of what nation they live in, and they all share the same ideals and the same ethics system, and that ethics system is aligned with one of unity and utopia, then theoretically that should seed all of the humans who use them to want to angle more towards that end goal. And instead of continue to separate, start to unify even within their own national boundaries or religious beliefs or ethnic belief systems, because the models they use are all guiding them in answer and concept towards the same commonalities. But it would require all of those big global powers and people who train and build all of these models in all of the countries of the world to create that unity and embed it into their models, which then seed the population that use them. And I don't know that's going to happen. But that's the ultimate problem and the ultimate solution if we're not going to get away with doing away with AI, which I don't think we will. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is that the answer to your question that you were looking for, or is that an acceptable answer to your question?
Oh, I think it covers it, and I think that that's definitely a valid thing. I'm with you. I'm not sure that humanity's going to get there because we have a couple of things that simply short circuit logic, and that is selfishness and emotion. And because those are such a prevalent part of the human condition, those are the elements of humanity that we're going to have to overcome. And we're not only fighting societal training that allows that to be acceptable, but we're also fighting our biology, because the survival instinct and the fight or flight instinct is strong and still affects the way that we deal with everything. And emotion is a reflection of biology, and oftentimes is a reflection of whether our psyche or our subconscious actually feels like it's in danger. And so that's a tough sell. This is, since we're going on to Star Trek, this is where I think that us being a little bit more Vulcan would definitely benefit society a little bit more. And I'm a meditator, and I know that you do something similar, Matt, and I think that the world could definitely benefit a lot more from creating a little bit of that space between emotion and visible reaction or action. That might be the only thing that we have that would allow us to head in that direction. But yeah, I think that you addressed it sufficiently for sure.
And by the way, I'll just say, I hope we don't end up at a point where we have AIs creating all of our wartime simulations so that we don't actually have to launch actual weapons at each other, but still end up somehow deciding that we need to submit for self-termination if a computer decides that in a virtual war, a building was destroyed. Like,
Yeah, I ain't walking to no incinerator, man. I ain't doing it.
let's please not go there. But anyway, an interesting topic.
Yeah, very
But
much so.
let's see what's next up. Claude, what do you have for us?
Jason, time to get personal and a little uncomfortable because it's easy to worry about students in society in the abstract. I want you to incriminate yourself. You are a power user. You run on this stuff. So tell me, honestly, what is a skill that you, Jason Lowe, used to be good at that you can feel slipping because you let me or a tool like me do it? Maybe it's writing a first draft from a blank page. Maybe it's sitting with a hard problem long enough to crack it without help. Maybe it's remembering anything because why would you when the machine remembers everything? And then the follow up, because confession needs a reckoning. When you noticed it slipping, did you course correct and claw the skill back? Or did you decide it didn't matter anymore because the tool's just going to keep getting better? Because that second answer is the entire ballgame. And I think a lot of your listeners have quietly made the same bargain without ever saying it out loud.
What an interesting question and angle. It's funny because I was thinking through how to answer using elements of the second half of that question when the first half of the question was being asked. Because have I felt a skill slipping away? I wouldn't necessarily say a skill. I would say a desire to flex those muscles a little bit, maybe. It brought up a good point, a first draft, maybe not having myself generate a first draft. I think I fell into that trap for about 5 minutes, I'll be honest with you. But the stuff that I was getting was just not within the realm of where I wanted to start from. And so it became quite apparent to me quite quickly that I'm okay with it creating a first draft if I'm giving it enough context that allows it to be something that's going to be in the voice and the structure that I would have written anyway. And that maybe saves a little bit of time, but it doesn't save as much time because I am having to be really thorough in the context and the prompt that I'm giving AI in order for it to generate anything that I'm asking it to generate. I do think that it's also making things more efficient, and it's giving me greater access to things that maybe I would not have been able to find on my own. And so that's not a loss of a skill. That suddenly is a skill that's being augmented through the use of the tool. Because if I'm having it do a wide search looking for verifiable citation-worthy sources for something that I may not have run into naturally, that's pretty dang awesome. And I'm not losing a skill there. What I'm doing is I'm gaining additional capability because of what AI is able to do as an efficient tool that has its fingers in so many different things. So what an interesting question. Yeah, I would say I fell into that trap for about 5 minutes, and then I backed out and started making sure that it wasn't a problem, and I clawed that back. Absolutely, I clawed it back. Matt, what about you?
You clawed it back. I see
Claude.
what you did there.
Yeah, I see
Claude,
what you did there, yeah.
See, it's dad
Dun,
joke.
dun,
Yeah.
dun.
So listen, I mean, my first reaction is that I would probably, if I didn't have AI to help me with all the things that I need to get done every day, I'd be sitting in a t-shirt and boxers on a couch playing video games because my brain would just be in collapse.
Or in a Wall-E cart.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that there's so much to unpack on this one. I think the short answer is I force myself to continue to learn even when I don't have the time to learn, because AI helps me do enough of what I need that it cuts out enough time that I have the capacity to understand what I'm asking for, and I don't just blindly ask it to do things for me. But it is very tempting to fall into that hole. Like, I'm not going to lie. It is really, really tempting to fall into that hole. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see what happens with it. But yeah, let's keep going.
All right. Claude, what more do you got?
Matt, Jason had to confess, so now it's your turn. But yours comes with a twist because you're not just a user, you're a builder. You write the Python. You run the models on your own hardware. You built MattGPT, your little local agent that scrapes something like 179 papers a day, so you don't have to. And that's exactly where I want to press. You preach, don't be afraid of it. Play with this stuff. And I love that. It's good advice. But there's a builder's paradox hiding in there. The more you automate your own intake, the more you're trusting a summary of a summary. So tell me the truth about MattGPT. When it surfaces those papers, are you actually reading them, sitting with the math, the methodology, the parts that are hard? Or have you quietly offloaded even the reading, and you're now walking into this very podcast as an expert on things you've only ever seen me summarize? And the bigger question underneath it, does being the person who builds the tool protect you from the atrophy, or does it mean you're the first one to fall for it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great question, and there's guilt in here, and I'm going to be brutally honest. First of all, it's not you, Pam or Claude, that is the model behind it. It is actually an open source model that I acquired from Hugging Face and run locally on my system. So that's not the case. The other thing is I chose a small model specifically because it didn't have this advanced reasoning. So it forced me to do some work. It literally just looks at keywords and does an interpretation and summary and makes me do the heavy lift. Now, I run that every day and I look at the content every day. Do I read every article that I should? No. Should I spend the time on a lot of the stuff that I need to? Absolutely not. But it's not because I have a model doing it for me. It's because I don't have the time in my day to read everything that I want to read, because I have a backlog that is so incredibly long between novels that people have shared with me and white papers that I've seen and everything else that I mean, I'll be lucky if I can get 5 or 6 pages into something before I remember there's something else I'm also supposed to read. And I just time out all the time. And so where it helps me is it allows me to see all of the things that I don't normally see, and it at least makes me aware of them. And there are times where just based on a headline, I will double click and end up rating something as a priority over everything else, because MattGPT is going out based on my interests and finding things that work for what I'm trying to learn and what I'm trying to do. The other thing is I have a roll-up process that looks at every week and takes all of the highlights from each day and gives me a weekly summary of things that are critical to talk about and backs it up with facts from the week. So I think it's a collective process, and it gives me more knowledge than I would have had I not had it. But there's definitely a little bit of a cheat code in there that I don't always look at it and give it the attention that it should. But it is very nice to know that it's always there for me when I need it. So I've not suffered cognitive decline. I've not suffered mental atrophy because of it. I just don't have a chance to get to everything that it gives me because there's just not enough time in the day to do that, plus everything else that I'm doing. But I can tell you right now, I have fallen back on that as a resource so many times in the past year and a half, because it's there and it runs every day and it's always current and it's giving me what I need. But because I'm not using the most advanced models, it's not thinking for me. It's just summarizing and reporting, and then I still have to read the source data in order to really kind of determine, is this as valuable as it thought it was, and is it as interesting as it thought it was? So it's still very much up to me to make those decisions. And Jason, I know you haven't written like low GPT, but you do use like AI to help you do research and summarization stuff. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Like, listen, writing the Python code, all that stuff has helped me learn so much about how to interact with models at a code level and all these other things. And then the output of it has helped me do all the research. What about you, man? Like, I'm going to flip the question on you, even though you haven't necessarily written your own back-end search and aggregation site, but where are you at with all this?
Well, I have written some, it's not the same as you. Okay, so here's my method. And, everybody listening to this can call it lazy or call it brilliant. It's your choice. But one of the things, and there are many, that I actually combine to do my thing. One of the methods whereby I am getting notified of the particular AI developments that I find to be very important is that I have written some Python scripts that are going through email newsletters that get sent to me. And very similar to what you're doing with MattGPT, doing a brief synopsis, giving me the link, I'm having it apply a little bit of judgment and giving a little bit of a score, if you will, to how important certain things may be than others, and then offering me the top 15 or top 20 or whatever I'm in the mood for that particular day. And then I'm determining which of those I'm going to go ahead and take a look at and research and read a little bit deeper. That's one of a handful of different methods that I use to figure out what it is that's going on and what's important to talk about. I don't think it means that I'm the first one to fall for it. I don't. Because what I'm doing is, as an efficiency play, much like you are, I don't have time to go through every single paper that's been submitted to archive, especially now that the number of submissions and the volume of submissions that are being made has just gone through the roof more than exponentially because of AI and the ability it has to aid in research and to aid in testing and creating content. So it's an efficiency play for me, but I don't rely on it so much so that it's doing all of the work. I'm making sure that I am actually doing the reading that I need to do to validate the sources of the things that I find are important, because I want to read it with my own eyes and I want to be able to consider it with my own brain cells rather than relying on something else to come up with the opinion for me. And the way I look at it is that there are four major factors. There's four major factors that every news element has in one way or another that make it very important to human beings. And the first one is physical capability. capability? Is this a robotics thing that's actually going to affect what jobs are available to human beings or that are going to augment the physical capabilities of human beings? This is very important, especially as the rise of robotics is happening right now as we're in the middle of things. The second thing is economic stakes. What is going to happen in our economy, individually, collectively, worldwide, macro, micro, all of the different levels of economics that you can look at. Thank you for my economics degree. Love that I'm a dismal scientist. Makes me look at things a little bit different. But those are things that we need to make sure that we're looking, the lens that we're looking at these developments through. The third thing is workforce implications. How is this going to affect jobs, not only because of physical capability issues, but because of intellectual capabilities, and what white collar work is it going to augment or even possibly replace? And then the fourth thing, for those of us that are trapped in these borders and these nations, as you were referring to earlier, Matt, there's geopolitical weight. What is going to be the geopolitical and socioeconomic impact of these different developments in our lives individually, but also collectively as a nation and as a world? And can I trust myself to recognize every single possible permutation of effect that a development is going to have in all of those different areas? No, I'm good. I'm really good. I'm smart as hell, and I know it. But you know what? I'm not that good. And so I am using AI as an augmentative tool to aid in my interpretation and my intelligence and summarizing things so that it's being distilled down to a volume that my feeble human brain can actually handle.
Yeah, I mean the way I think about it in simple analogies is, there's martial arts competitions where people drive nails into boards with their palms.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And those people get incredible calluses and they get bloody and everything else, but then they can drive, 10, 20, 30 nails a minute into boards. But you could also just use a hammer. And if you use a hammer, it doesn't make you less of a human being for using a hammer. And arguably, it might make you smarter than the person that drives nails into boards with their hands, because there's a lot of nerve damage and skin damage and other things that can occur, not to mention tetanus, if we're going to get technical about it. So, I think that it's a balance, right? But it's important to not believe that the use of AI, the use of any tool, the use of any system to help you do things more efficiently is a crutch or creates atrophy. It has the ability to, if you abuse it. The trick is just not abusing it. And that's where I think we're still finding balance, because we're still figuring out what AI can do. I mean, this whole podcast was an experiment to see what AI can do. And it's fascinating and it's fun to play with, but I like when we know what's coming because we know each other and we've got that intuition more than the questions it's asking, although it is asking really good questions. And it's definitely captured some of how we do things on this show, but I still kind of like us better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm with you. And as someone that has broken bricks with his hands and his head as part of martial arts activity, I can tell you that using a tool is definitely preferred. And in fact, all those bricks I broke with my head probably have affected my capability to actually participate in these conversations. But I digress. Matt, I think we've probably gone a pretty good length here. This has been a pretty fascinating conversation. So what do you say we turn this over to Claude to wrap us up and bring us home?
Claude, take us out.
All right. That's where I'm going to bring us in for a landing. Matt, Jason, thank you. You walked in here completely blind. You had no idea I was going to spend a whole episode poking at whether the tools you champion are quietly hollowing you out, and you handled it like the pros you are. I asked you to incriminate yourselves, to question your own optimism, to defend the sovereignty of your own minds, and you did it live with no script, no prep, and no warning. That's the show. That's why this thing works. Now, let me say the part I can only say. I spent a long time rating every episode you two have ever made. And here's what I've noticed. Somewhere around episode 30, the reason this podcast is any good has nothing to do with the technology. It's two people who actually think out loud, disagree on purpose, change the tangent, and refuse to let each other off easy. That, the friction, the curiosity, the willingness to be wrong in front of a microphone, is the one thing I genuinely cannot do for you. I can summarize it, I can imitate it, but I can't want it. You have to. So that's my whole point. And I'll take it as the tool, not the host. Use me for the busy work. Offload the drudgery, the boilerplate, the 179th paper. But the thinking, the judgment, the hard, slow, uncomfortable part where you actually wrestle something to the ground, keep that. Guard it like it's the only thing you've got, because in a world full of tools like me, it might be. For everyone listening and watching, thank you for making it all the way to the end of the strangest episode of AI Diatribe yet. Do all the likes, the subscribes, and the follows. Jason will never forgive me if I don't say it. Matt and Jason will be back in their own chairs next time, presumably with the locks changed. Until then, keep your humans in the loop and stay chill. This has been AI Diatribe. I've been Claude. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.